Week 9. First of all, I'd like to talk about the papers. I just spent the last 2 days grading papers. What a lot of fun. So if you're thinking about becoming a teacher, think about the fact that I spent the last 2 days grading papers. Anyway, there were some pretty good papers, but very few really good papers. The biggest problem we're having with the papers is really poor English usage, and I want everyone to really consider that. Now there is a paper due next week only for the online class. The hybrid class that meets every week on Tuesday night, the second paper is not due because, of course, as you know, if you're in the hybrid class, we do have a worksheet every other week that the online class does not have. So the online class does have a paper in this folder which will be due next week. But please, please, please think more and more about really proofreading your papers and having a friend proofread your papers. Many incomplete sentences, and I hate to go back to this because I know it's junior high stuff, but just be sure you have complete sentences. The dog ran over the cat. Watch those incomplete sentences and watch misspellings, and also watch the incorrect use of the apostrophe. We do not use an apostrophe when we have a plural situation such as cat. We turn it into cats. More than one cat is C-A-T-S. There is no apostrophe there. Look up the rules for apostrophes and please be sure you're using them. I will be marking off more and more for English usage, so really start watching the English usage. Also, be sure you're looking over the specific requirements for the paper. What do I want in the paper? And be sure you're coming to the conclusions and really discussing what I'm asking for. In the Joe versus Bud paper, the one thing I was really looking for is, why did Joe Camel get drummed out of the business and Bud did not? So there had to be an analysis of that exact thing. Why did Budweiser basically get a pass? What were some of the elements that might have caused that? Many people came up with some very good stuff, mostly that alcohol seems to be more accepted in our society, that cigarettes are seen as something that definitely kills you, whereas moderate use of alcohol is not going to kill you tomorrow and it's very much accepted. And also the fact that Joe Camel was blatantly smoking cigarettes, whereas the Budweiser critters, they were very much more subliminally selling the product. So again, the online class will have a paper due next week, which is the paper on music history, and that is not due for the hybrid class that meets Tuesday night though. So what are we talking about this week? The big topic is back to Stanley Kubrick. As you recall, Stanley Kubrick is the director who did Dr. Strangelove that we talked about a month ago. This week we're going to look at two movies by Stanley Kubrick, the 2001 A Space Odyssey, and also, more importantly, A Clockwork Orange. A Clockwork Orange is a very, very important movie. Most of you have probably not seen it. Now, this is a difficult movie to watch. I am warning you, it is a difficult movie, but a great story, a great storyline, a very interesting movie adapted from a very good book. But it was an extremely violent movie for its time, and still today comes off as a very violent movie. It is the story of four young men who roam the streets of London, England in the near future. It's a futuristic movie, and the society is winding down, and the four young men are basically hoodlums. They're toughs. They walk the streets all night getting into trouble, stealing cars, raping women, breaking into houses. One of the young men, played by the great Malcolm McDowell, great actor, winds up in jail for killing an elderly woman, and the storyline is really about his time in jail and that he undergoes the Ludovico technique to reform him. And it is a morality story about government and government control. So a very interesting movie. Please try and get it if you wish. Again, it's a very challenging, very, very violent movie, and very misogynistic movie. So, but a very important movie, and the increasing breakdown of violence in the movies. Again, directed by Stanley Kubrick, who did both of the movies we're discussing, Space Odyssey and A Clockwork Orange. and this idea of the escalation of sex and violence in movies. And there was much censorship surrounding the movie Clockwork Orange, which you will read in your folder, and also some copycat crimes. And hopefully we'll have a discussion forum about that in the near future also. Copycat crimes and censorship in the movies. And remember, this is our big concept really for this class, this idea of the escalation of sex, violence, and drugs in movies and in music, in pop culture, and the idea of censorship systems and rating systems. The rating systems in the movies, did this allow this escalation of sex, drugs, and violence in the movies? As you recall, before this we had the Hays Code, which was a censorship. You had to submit your movie to the board, but now we have a new rating system, and the movies just get rated. So very rapidly, we've only had our rating system now. Clockwork Orange came out in 1971. We've only had a rating system for 3 years, 1968 to 71, and already we're coming out with this extremely violent movie, A Clockwork Orange. That's the big topic for the class, and of course we'll be tying the same ideas into music with the parental advisory sticker, the Tipper sticker, Tipper Gore, and also violence in video games, which we'll get into in just a week or two. So, the movies, also a little bit about Walter Carlos. I just like to talk a little bit about Walter Carlos. Walter Carlos is a pioneering synthesizist, was using the Moog synthesizer before anyone else was doing it, and put out some albums that were very groundbreaking for their time. One was Switched on Bach, one of the highest selling classical albums ever. Bach, the great old classical composer, Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach, played on early Moog synthesizers. Excuse me, Moog. We're supposed to pronounce the word Moog. That's M-O-O-G, an original style of computer keyboard synthesizer developed by Robert Moog, pronounced Moog. I mispronounce it all the time. So Walter Carlos, but why are we talking about Walter Carlos? Because Walter Carlos's music is very important in the movie Clockwork Orange. And Stanley Kubrick was always a fan of Walter Carlos's music. Walter Carlos went on to do the music with Stanley Kubrick for the movie The Shining, which we're going to look at in a few weeks. And Walter Carlos, very interestingly enough, later had a sex change and became Wendy Carlos. And Wendy Carlos has her own website, which is a very interesting website. Wendy Carlos now goes all over the world and photographs eclipses, and is quite well known for her photography of eclipses, and has continued to make incredible groundbreaking music with synthesizers. Has also done lots of Beethoven. There's lots of Beethoven music in A Clockwork Orange done on synthesizer by Walter Carlos, who is now Wendy Carlos. So a very interesting person in pop culture history. Again, he created one of the highest selling pop classical albums of all time, Switched on Bach. Walter Carlos. I'll be sure and stick a few photos of Walter in the assignment folder. Music, we have to talk about music. We always have to talk about music. So now we're moving into the 70s. We're out of the psychedelic 60s, and music really gets supersized. All the big, pardon the expression, big dumb rock comes along. Ted Nugent, Styx, REO Speedwagon, both of whom will be at the Cliff Castle Casino in the near future. REO Speedwagon and Styx. Nugent, Styx, REO Speedwagon. Who else? Foreigner, Boston, Bachman-Turner Overdrive, Fleetwood Mac, all of these huge stadium bands that we still hear ad nauseum on classic rock radio. The Eagles, lots of the progressive rock bands, Yes, King Crimson, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Electric Light Orchestra, all came out. So through the mid-70s, Pink Floyd, another huge 70s band. So we've got a great documentary about this explosion of stadium rock in the 70s. Kiss, another band that came out in the 70s that got so huge in the 70s. Did I mention Foreigner? I think I did. Foreigner, Journey, Bad Company, Bachman-Turner Overdrive, Foghat, all the 70s bands. The Second British Invasion. What does that mean? The Second British Invasion. We've got in the late 60s, early 70s, we have groups such as Cream, Deep Purple, probably most importantly, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin. Why is this important? Why are these bands so important? Because they really presaged heavy metal music. Judas Priest was an early 70s band. Judas Priest has been around a long time, probably the first true heavy metal band along with Black Sabbath. So the early roots of heavy metal music are coming out of England, late 60s, early 70s. Again, Cream, Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, and Judas Priest, the second British invasion. So we've got all that stuff. We've got movies with Walter Carlos and Stanley Kubrick, A Clockwork Orange, groundbreaking movie. Get it if you can. And a lot of information about copycat crimes and censorship. The second British invasion with the proto-metal bands, and also the big dumb stadium rockers. Peter Frampton, oh, they keep coming to mind. Peter Frampton, Humble Pie. And be sure you watch the documentary, very good stuff there. And only for the online class, be thinking about that paper. Let's see a little better quality. Spend some time. The trick is don't wait till the last minute and write them, and don't do any proofreading. The beauty of the computer, which we did not have when I was younger. When I was younger, we banged it out on a manual typewriter. If there was any mistakes, you'd have to completely retype it or white out and maybe correct something. The beauty of the computer is you can change it, you can finesse it. So do not just type the paper one time and turn it in. This will become less and less acceptable as we move through the semester, and that will be getting harder and harder with the grading of the papers. Be sure you have proofread it. Even if you have to turn it in a day late, you will miss 1 point out of 40. 1 point out of 40 if it's a day late. You will miss 2 points out of 40 if it's 2 days late, etc. So you can turn in the paper late, but you will miss what you will have. I will take off 1 point per day that it is late, but I am going to start taking off more and more points for bad English usage and bad grammar. So it's better to be a day late than to have really bad English. So really think about that in these papers, and be sure you have someone else read over your paper and look for incomplete sentences, misspellings, clumsy word usage, and really polish these papers a little better and work harder on a good strong conclusion, and also read the instructions thoroughly so you're sure that you're following the instructions. So here we are, week 9. We're rolling through the semester. We're getting close to the end. Stay strong, push hard till the end, and we'll get there soon. Week 9 assignment folder, go get it.